So us being able to bring the proper lighting to be able to make it look good in the space. The other thing is we want to be as little of a distraction to the audience as possible. And so one of the things that we talked to the client after the fact that they didn't budget in was risers.
You brought a strobe light, and it's like one of the first times you brought, I think it was either
Oh,
a strobe light
spotlight,
or
yeah.
spotlight.
Yeah,
And
we did a stage spotlight.
yeah, and we're just like, let's just see how this works. And again, that's just us adjusting with what we have, right?
There's no such thing as perfect, right? With live, we definitely do our best to create all of these strategies and backup plans so that we can act swiftly to make in the moment decisions that allow the content to be the best that it can.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the DigiVlog. We're so grateful that you came back. I'm sure it's because you liked and subscribed and turned on your notifications. I'm sure that's why you're watching this one. But if not, don't forget to like and subscribe. We're going to be talking about a lot of great stuff today. And I am really grateful to be here with two familiar faces, Alyssa and Nason. How's it going, guys?
It's going good.
Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about something that's more and more popular these days, especially with podcasting and trying to draw in a bigger audience. A lot of times our clients are putting a lot of investment and time and energy into having the right people speak for them to get the right stories out. And we love making our traditional video production to tell a lot of these stories. But sometimes you can reach a bigger audience more immediately through live streaming. Now, live streaming is a totally different animal. But when it comes down to it, just like video, like traditional video production, it's all about pre-production. It's all about the planning. There's so much that goes into the planning. And I would venture to say, and we'll go to Alyssa on this first one to speak to this a little bit because she is in the thick of it with this. But pre-production is even more important, in my opinion, when it comes to live streaming. Alyssa, can you tell us a little bit about why you feel that way? Do you feel that way? And what are the kind of nuanced differences that we'll get into detail with between traditional video production, where we just record and edit after the fact, and live streaming pre-production?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Adam, like you kind of already hit on it. The reality is that you only get one shot when you're doing something live. And that's the case with any of the live formats. We've seen it before with traditional live broadcast media. And nowadays everything's gone digital. So transitioning into this live streaming era, the reality is that you only get one chance to get it right during the live event. And now we do encourage our clients to leverage the content that we create for them with that live stream outside of that singular event. Like, you should invite people to participate in the live stream, but once you have that recorded media following the event, you should then continue to place it in new places online. You should continue to, segment it, break it up, take sections of it, whether you're using it for socials or an ad campaign or whatever you want to do with that. So it shouldn't be the only place in where you use it. And that, in that sense, yes, you can kind of go back and finagle things that maybe didn't go perfectly as planned or didn't look just right, and edit a little bit around that. But in the moment when you've invited, especially in a clinical space, when you've invited clinicians to come to your live stream to listen to a talk about a specific subject, you do want to execute that in the most professional way possible, because that image that you're building for yourself is going to speak to those clinicians and physicians who are on the fence about utilizing your product or your service. And we always want to put our best foot forward. So pre-production plays a huge role in making sure that when you're planning your live stream event, that everything is executed as well as possible. Now, and I can't speak for you guys, Adam and Nason, but in my experience, because I actually grew up doing a lot of AV, just in my family, that was a big part of our little community growing up. In my experience, I feel like there's no such thing as perfect, right? With live, I feel like there's always going to be something that's not just right, or something you couldn't have anticipated that happened or changed in the moment. And we definitely do our best to create all of these strategies and backup plans so that we can act swiftly to make in the moment decisions that allow the content to be the best that it can. But it would be wrong of me to say that there's ever going to be an instance when you're doing something live and everything's 100% perfect and it went exactly how you thought it would.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing to remember is that you plan the jump, right? We've talked about this before. You plan the jump, and then you jump the plan and be ready for anything, right? There's this advice I got from a famous base jumper. When it comes to our plans, I think my tends to turn into like the Bible of our live stream that we're doing is the run of show. Okay. So recently we did a couple months ago a live stream in Memphis. It was a really cool case study that we can share with you a little bit where they had physician experts coming to talk about research and their case studies, speaking to a room of physicians. It was a really cool experience, great ambiance, cool venue. And we're going to talk about three things that made that successful and then talk about some of the things that didn't go according to plan and how we were able to adapt on the fly. And so a perfect example of this, let's talk about the first of the three, and I'll just say what the three things are. And so you have to stay all the way to the end to get to all three of them. But the first one that we're going to talk about, what's called a run of show. The second thing we're going to talk about is the location and why the location matters so much. And the third thing we're going to talk about is crewing, proper crewing. And that we'll talk a little gear as part of crewing. But first and foremost, I'm going to throw this to Alyssa, and then Nathan, we're going to talk about it too, because it's really important for us. Is what is a run of show, Alyssa? What is that, and why is it so important? Why does it become the blueprint of everything we do on a live stream?
Yeah, so just like when you're planning a meeting or a presentation, you have an agenda that lays out exactly the order in which things are going to occur and what you're going to go through. So your run of show is like that. It's basically an overview of this is what we're expecting to go over and during this event, and here are the different people who will be on stage at whatever time and how many people will be speaking simultaneously. So it's a little more inclusive. Like when you're making a meeting agenda, you're probably just thinking about the topics you're going to talk about and maybe how long each one's going to get in terms of time. Yes, you need to think about that. In addition to that, because you're doing a live event and you have AV included in that, and AV would be like live audio visual. So we talk about that very separately than when we talk about what we do for the most part, which is commercial video content production. So those two things might collaborate together, but are also independent skill sets and crews and equipment. So in this scenario with the live stream, you're working with both those things simultaneously. You have people who are doing the audio visual for the live segment of the event, and then simultaneously you have people who are specializing in content production who are helping execute on the recording of that media that's going to live beyond the event itself. So because we have both of those crews together working on this, and there is a live element, you have to communicate to those individuals how many people or participants are in the conversation. Where is the audio coming from? Are we going to take Q&As from the audience? Who do we have who's going to be, roaming with microphones? Or are people going to stand up and come to a standing microphone to ask questions? And how do we communicate that to our audience to make sure that they know what to anticipate and where they need to be? So it's a little bit more of an inclusive rundown or agenda of what's going to happen during the duration of this recorded event.
Yeah, that is a great way to put it. It's more than an agenda. And I think that's something that has to be really clear to our marketers here when they understand what a run of show is. And a normal agenda I would see is this person's going to talk about this, and then this person's going to talk about that. When I build a run of show, it's going to say this person is going to be talking about this for this long at this place with this microphone, with these microphones for audience reaction, and they will be done at this time exactly. And then the new line is at this time exactly, this new person receives this microphone, right? So it becomes very specific. Now, Nathan, we've gone through run of show during the pre-production several times just to discuss gear, just to be like, what are we going to bring? Because a run of show could change dramatically what we bring. There's been times where Alyssa and I have been talking about like, yeah, this is probably a 2-camera setup. And then I start talking to you, Nathan, and you're like, there's no way we can do this really at the quality we want with 2 cameras. So tell me a little bit about your experience when you and I dig into our gear, we're looking at the run of show and how that dictates what we bring.
When you say, 2 cameras, sometimes that's a really good case when it comes to like testimonial, when we know we have full control over what's going on in our environment. So when it's like a live stream and we're like 2 cameras, most of the time we're like, let's just bring one more just in case. but it's also another way to just give the client another eyesight. Like sometimes they don't realize that another angle can really change just how the live stream can look like. So the way we do it is we will have a camera rigged up, and that's another case with talking about gear, is that we'll find little ways to rig things that's one, not too distracting to the audience, because we don't want a camera right there and then they're looking at the camera and keep looking back, and then it's just, it won't look good in the edit. So there's things that we'll rig up like a gorilla pod, and that's something that we don't normally bring on set because it's very small and it's only really useful for specific things like putting it in a hard angle area. We usually have, as you've seen on previous episodes, a big box that's loaded with a lot of gear. When it comes to these type of events, we're usually not running that much boxes because we have a specific box that's all about live streaming. So bringing what is it called, Adam?
We used an ATEM for our live switcher, and that can take up to 8 different camera angles.
That's another way for us to not to say eliminate a person from viewing a camera, but it gives at least Adam the control to make sure everything's looking good.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we talk about too, and Alyssa, you help a ton with this, is usually we have camera angles, but we also have a computer that has the presentation on it. So the feed from the presentation, we also need sometimes a safety feed, right? So sometimes we need to throw a slide onto the live stream that says "Be back soon," because you never know what might happen. There could be a storm outside and the power could go out. Like you never know. And so what we want to do is make sure that we have a plan, and we've planned for that plan really well so that everything goes smoothly. And then if anything goes wrong, we can make adaptations because we're so well planned that the audience may not notice, or the audience is fine with it because it's live, and everything live has things that come up. So I think it's really important to remember that, like, when you have a proper run of show, we can plan for as much as possible. But if we don't have a run of show, if we don't know what's going on, then we're trying to plan for everything that's possible. And that's how we get out of scope. That's how we have the wrong size crew. That's how we bring the wrong gear, right? So a lot of decisions are made based on what the plan is and what the presentation is meant to be. And really that's about us communicating really well with the client, knowing what the needs are, what the ask is, and us being able to fill those needs based on a very specific run of show. And Alyssa, you're really good at communicating with the client, just our needs. So as a crew, we can keep working and setting up gear or whatever it is. And so what is it like on set when you have a run of show and you're meeting with say, the physicians that are presenting, or the marketing person who's running the event? How do you help them understand the needs to, say, keep to the run of show, try to stay within time, things like that? How is it working with them to make sure that they're aware of what we're doing and we're just not the only ones aware of what they're doing?
Yeah. So working in this like healthcare clinical realm, I think that a lot of the participants in these types of events are clinicians, and their accessibility leading up to the event can be really restrictive. So more often than not, a lot of the communications before the event who we're syncing up with and we're having these pre-production calls with, that's typically the internal team on our client side. So marketers, right? What oftentimes doesn't happen, unfortunately, until the day of the event is those meetings with the actual participants who are speaking. So if you have an SME who's going to be moderating the event for you, and they're not someone who's on your regular team inside of your business or organization, but maybe a physician who you've brought in for this particular event because they're a specialist in that area, or they have a lot of experience with your product and they're really great, like brand ally or advocate for you. I think that that's great to do. But you should make sure that that person is, I'd say minimum an hour before the actual event arrives, because more often than not, a producer like myself is going to sit down with the people who are participating in the event and speaking in the event, with likely the marketer from your team who's in charge of that event. So we'll sit down, we'll all go through, hey, this is the run of show, and we'll go through the key things that are most relevant to them just to make them comprehensive on roughly the timelines. We know that it's a little hard in the moment when you're presenting to be watching the exact time. At live events, oftentimes you'll have that little stopwatch clock that's, you know, in front of the presenter at the front of the room. And you can always set something like that up. But let's be honest, like, you know, physician's going to do what they're going to do. Like, they're going to see it, but that doesn't mean they're just going to cut themselves off in the middle of you know, an important sentence or talking through a slide to hop out of their presentation, especially when they put time and effort into their slides and putting this together. They want to get the full word out. So I think setting expectations at the day of is helpful. With the marketers and event coordinators we're working with inside of your business, those people will typically connect with, I'd say I'm used to at least 3 touch points before we even get to the event venue. So you would typically have a kickoff at the beginning of the project to set expectations of, here's what we're looking to do, here's where the content's going to live, here's what we need from, you know, the Digivid team, and here's what we're going to do. So some of our clients might host their own videos. Some of them might need us to host the live stream for them through a platform like StreamYard, which is the platform we're using right now to make this recording. So we might manage those things for them if that's what they need, or they might want us to do the video, but they want to plug it into a unique landing page on their website. Someone on their team has to build that landing page. So there's a lot of communication up front to just figure out what do we want to do and how do we want to do it. And then we resync up once we've got some elements together and in place to check in, just to say, are we on target? You know, here's the date we're looking at that we're supposed to be hosting this live stream event. You know, have we executed on everything on the back end that needs to be prepared to go to launch? Do we have all of our, you know, Adam spoke earlier about graphic elements are a huge factor in this, right? Do we have our backup screens? Do we have our slides? And clinicians are notorious for not getting their slides done until like the day before the presentation that they're going to give. So if you know that that's likely to be the case, you know, you might want to have some very strict parameters for your clinicians of, hey, because we have a live stream and we have people attending virtually, we need to commit to a fixed, you know, duration for this event. So, you know, you're only going to have X amount of time. We think that should be roughly this many slides. Please make your presentation no more than this many slides. If I get it the night before and it's more, we're going to make you cut things down. So, you know, it's tough. I know that's really hard, especially when you're asking someone to, you know, participate on your behalf and speak for your brand when they're your customer. But these parameters help ensure that the people who are tuning in and participating get what they came for, especially if it's like a paid participation event, right? Because you can, you know, host private virtual events as live streams that people are paying a ticket price to participate in. So you have to be very conscious about what you've set up and how participants are going to engage, and making sure that they're getting what they want out of it. So they're going to be encouraged to not just stick around for the whole thing and participate, but they're also, after the event, going to feel encouraged to share the content elsewhere or speak about your brand or the product to their colleagues.
Yeah, and I think that's why I run a show is so valuable, because there's lots of times where we want to sit down with their web person and with their graphic designer to go, okay, where's it going to live? What's that landing page going to look like? What's the branding going to feel like? Okay, cool. Graphics person, how do we want the graphics to look? We need to preload those into the ATEM, into the switch software to switch between camera angles. And so all of that is part of the conversation and pre-production when it comes to the run of show. And I think another thing that really comes up, and it becomes like super valuable for us once we have the run of show, is we get to understand, how big is the audience? How big is the stage? Is there multiple people going to be on the stage? How does that affect our audio? And so, Nathan, this last trip we took to Memphis, we were able to get pictures of the venue. We were able to get feedback on the speed of the internet and things like that. How valuable is it to know as much as possible about the venue for you as our primary camera operator when we do these live streams? What kind of things are you looking for when you look at a venue and then start asking Alyssa and I questions about, okay, cameras, where are we placing things, what's going to be in there? What do you consider when you see a venue or looking at a venue?
There's 2 things that I consider, and it's lighting and the colors of the walls, which is something that not really people would think of, but when you light a room, whatever color the wall is going to reflect back. So for this room, it was great room, especially if it was in a restaurant, believe it or not. And with a presentation going on inside of a private venue with a restaurant, it was super quiet. You wouldn't even notice there was a whole restaurant on the other side. But the one thing that I noticed was the skin tones of the on the people who were presenting was they were reflecting the colors of the wall. So it gave them a very beige look. And adjusting to our cameras, we were trying to make it normal, and then it looked more magenta, then it would look more green, and we're just trying to go back and forth on that. And I remember you brought a strobe light, and it's like one of the first times you brought either a
spotlight, yeah.
Spotlight.
Yeah, we did a stage spotlight.
Yeah, and we're just like, let's just see how this works. And again, that's just us adjusting with what we have, right? Because again, the room was great, and there's always ways to figure things out. And another thing I remember too, I believe we put on our famous inflatable light. Every time we bring, they always ask, like, what is this? And you put it right. There was a beam that was metal, and you put it right up there. So there was a light source on them that's not viewable from the audience and on camera that helped the whole staging. But yeah, that's just another thing where when we get all the info and we look at everything, we're like, great. And plus the photos, not all photos do rooms justice. Sometimes it'll make it look bigger than what it's supposed to. Or again, maybe the photos we got, their camera adjusted their coloring and it made it look different than when we walked in. Other than that, I mean, I always look for the spacing. So I knew this was gonna be a presentation, and I knew that there was gonna have like meals in between. And I remember just telling Alyssa, like, the way the tables are set up, like, is this how it's going to be? Because again, the photo is the setup, but that doesn't mean they don't have something already pre-made where the tables are going to be moved, which again, that can affect our end where we already have cameras locked in. A good thing for this one, I think it was already set in stone with like all the tables were at. But yeah, those are the two things, at least for my end, when it comes to like shooting the live stream, is to make sure the lighting and making sure everything on that people don't see isn't a distraction for the viewer.
Yeah, I think that's huge, because I think even if we have the right camera angle and it's on just the presenter and we're not showing audience at all, you can tell if they look jaundiced, right? You can tell if it looks like their kidneys are failing, and that's kind of what you were getting at, is the light off of the walls was making them look yellow and almost orange. So us being able to bring the proper lighting to be able to make it look good in the space. The other thing, to jump off what you were saying about being a distraction to the audience, is we want to be as little of a distraction to the audience as possible. And so one of the things that we talked to the client after the fact that they didn't budget in was risers. So at this particular presentation, everyone was supposed to stand at a podium. Now, doctors wander sometimes. I wander when I talk sometimes. Every time. So so we get it. Like, when you're excited about something, sometimes you walk away from the podium and things like that. And that's part of that conversation that Alyssa will have at the beginning, is like, hey, the microphone's at the podium. Don't leave the podium. Stay at the podium. That's where the microphone is, right? And the audience might see you, but the live stream audience won't be able to hear you. And so one of the things that's really important for us to ask is, where's the audience going to be? How are they going to be seated? Just like Nathan was saying. Because that may be the thing where we go, we have tripods that go up to 7 feet, but for this, it might be better if the podium was or if the stand and the podium was up on a riser, and then the cameras were on a riser at the same level. That way people could walk around in front of the cameras and things, and the cameras won't see them because we'll be over their heads. And so things like that are really important. Now, this particular venue, I would have still been a little cautious about using risers, because their ceiling wasn't super tall. It wasn't like a conference ceiling that was super, super tall. And so we don't want to be in a position where we're like up in the rafters. So that's why the location is super, super important. The other thing, and I'm sure Alyssa is like, yes, we ask this every time, is what is the internet speed in the venue, and is it a hard line? That was like a huge question that took a little while for us to get an answer to. But Alyssa, you reached out again and again and again. How important is it to have a super stable internet line when it comes to live streaming?
Oh, for live stream, it's everything. If you don't have good internet connection, if you don't have a strong, especially, this was, as we said a couple times, this particular example took place at a restaurant setting. What that immediately told to me is, oh, great, there are going to be other people. Like, firstly, we have a party of, I think, over 50 participants who are coming to this event. And then on top of that, it's an active restaurant. They're not shutting down the whole restaurant for this one room, this one event. There's going to be a ton of people in the rest of the restaurant. They're all sucking up the bandwidth of their Wi-Fi. So we don't want to be Wi-Fi dependent in a situation like this, because the last thing you want is to lose your connection or to be lagging really bad, because that's exactly how you lose audience and participation on your stream. And as a marketer, we talk about this all the time on our previous episodes, but what matters to you is your company's making an investment in this project, and they need to see that they got value out of it. And a lot of times, even if it's not the only number that matters, the amount of people are watching, for how long they are watching, those are some of those hard metrics that for you can take to your leaders and say, this is how I know this event was successful. We privately invited, in this scenario, they did private invitations. So we privately invited X amount of clinicians who, are warm leads for us. Maybe they're not ordering with us, or maybe they're ordering with us, but they, could be using us in other areas or facets of their business, or ordering more frequently. We're trying to encourage growth with that client. So we invited them to this private live stream event. We invited 20 people. Of those 20, at our peak, 14 of them showed up, which to me, that's really good numbers, in my opinion, right? Like, that's a great performance. So having those metrics to take back to your leaders really helps verify to them that their investment was well spent. And you can't collect those things accurately if you have drop-off caused by internet problems or low participation caused by lag. So you have to have good Wi-Fi. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, just to kind of give people a frame of reference. In this scenario, fortunately, we were able to get a hard wire to the internet. And the speeds we were looking for were, I want to say, like 26 megabytes per second.
Yeah. If we want to run, so the thing that we'll have to sacrifice is resolution. And so the live stream resolution, we will set it to a limit and limit it lower if we feel like the internet speed isn't going fast enough. So if we're sticking at like 15 megabytes per second, I'm going to limit your live stream to 720. Now, we do internally record in hard drives off of the ATEM, which is the live switch. It's the thing that all the feeds go out to the live stream to, and that'll be 1080. So we'll be able to give you a nice 1080p resolution after the fact. But if we're running low, your audience is going to be watching 720, which tends to work pretty well for phones and things, but anything bigger than that, a TV, monitor, on a computer, things like that, you'll start to see that resolution drop. The other thing is, at that particular event, we were lucky enough to get a hard line. The hard lines, it's not just how fast the data goes, it's how consistent the data is, and making sure it's completely consistent. And we were getting a consistent like 250 megabytes per second. That's fantastic. Like, that's super good. And that's what we want. We want venues not only that look good, that sound good, like Nathan was talking about, but also that has a very stable internet. Because what's the point of paying for the extra money for a live stream if your live stream goes down? And what we want to do is do our best to avoid that at all costs. That's one of the biggest things. And so when we do a live stream with you as a marketer, we're going to have that at the top of our list. What venues are you looking at? And part of the decision of which venue to choose from is how stable is their internet and how fast is it. Another thing to keep in mind is we've done live streams out of conferences or hotels where you're paying for a hard line as a upcharge. Now, a lot of conferences, if you pay for a hard line, they give you an upcharge for a hard line, and then they give you an upcharge for every speed you want to increase it. Sometimes the beginning speed is as low as 10 megabytes per second. So you're talking about close to 5G like phone internet. And then you pay, I think the jump we looked at last time to go to 25 megabytes per second was $13,000 per day, which was pretty rough. But that's conferences, right? Every marketer, we know you guys. We know you're looking at these conferences. We know that you guys. It hurts your heart every time you ask the conference for something more. But go ahead, Alyssa.
To that point, Adam, like a great alternative is ancillary venues around the conference. Like, if you are thinking that you want to host a podcast and do a live stream at the event, or if you want to have your abstract, like you want your presenter to come do a version of it as a live stream, you can always use an ancillary space. So whether that's like a meeting room or a conference room that you've booked at the hotel that the conference is at, or even if you take them off-site to a secondary location. We have a lot of clients who do rely on us to help them in the pre-production with venue selection. If you aren't relying on us for venue selection, if you're an event marketer or you're a marketer and this isn't something you've really done a lot of before, we have, as producers on our team, we have a generic set of questions that help us evaluate if a venue is a good fit for a live stream. So I definitely recommend in any scenario where you're considering hosting a live stream, whether you're at a conference or you're doing it independently, that you reach out to your video vendor, whoever that is, ahead of time, and get some questions to take to your venues or when you're investigating venues, so that you make sure that you're getting somewhere qualified. Or in a perfect scenario, if you can afford to, bring in a producer on the pre-production end to help you coordinate the event and have them do that venue search for you, because they know the right things to ask. They know what they're looking for. They could send out local scouts if they have to, who are people that are qualified in the industry that they know. So there's a lot of ways to approach making sure you get the right location. And it will ultimately save you money, because again, as Adam said, the last thing we want is to be in the middle of an event and find out the hard way that the venue we picked isn't a really good fit and the live stream was terrible because there was noise that was disrupting us. Like, we had a shoot once where we were right next to a stadium, and the stadium had an event going on at the same day as our shoot. And so they had this big music, like a DJ come in playing music out the stadium, and you could hear it, I'm sure, blocks away. Fortunately, what we were filming wasn't impacted by it. But if we had been doing something like a live stream and that happened, it could have been extremely detrimental. So these are the types of things that from experience, we know what to look for. So ask for help if you're even contemplating it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're here. So many times, we've said this on multiple podcasts, but you guys are busy. Like, your marketers, especially in this space where it's a exploding industry, are being asked to do so much. And so utilize us. If we're going to be doing a live stream for you, it's worth, in my opinion, of course, I'm the one on the receiving end, but it's worth the money. It's worth the money for us to work with locations, to us to work with crewing. And that's what we're going to talk about next, is crew. Why crew is so important. And so I'm going to talk a little bit with Nason. Nason, you were juggling a lot on our last shoot. We had 3 cameras, and Alyssa, you were sitting at 1 camera, but Nason, you were like the man of cameras. How would you have planned differently, knowing how many cameras we were bringing, what the setup was, and then how the talent ended up reacting on stage? What changes would you have made in regards to crewing when it comes to the cameras?
Well, just to go a little bit back to the beginning of just the run of show, is it all stems from just prepping, right? Because we had the list of who's going to be presenting. We knew how many people were going to present, and we had the time and they were in the order with that we were given. Unfortunately, when it first started, they wanted to do introductions, but neither of them knew whether they should be on stage or they should be sitting down. And then on top of that, we didn't know where to give the mic to, right? We were moving around. So that, because we had cameras on sticks, and we were locked in on one area, we didn't know that there were going to be some situations like that where some people weren't going to be on stage and some people were going to be sitting down. That could be an issue when it is just one camera operator handling all that. But at the same time, I still believe that we just knew that if there was an issue happening, we got each other's back. I knew that even when you were on control, if I was on one camera and I just gave you a look, or we send each other just a little text like, hey, is this fine? I know you're gonna go quick and help that out, because there's some crews where that's the only responsibility, where, hey, you're the camera guy, you have to be the one. So I can't get all the credit myself, because Alyssa was there handling a camera. It's not just her sitting down and just hitting record. There was times where, like, hey, can you check if this setting is still working? Because that, and that's what I'm saying about the whole roll call and like bringing this all back, is because the context of things being a little bit tough is that once we hit record just for a practice run and we stopped, things changed and we had no clue what happened. Our cameras just reset it and it resetted all the settings that we had. So because of that, we already knew, okay, we're gonna have to get on our toes a little bit and making sure everything has to be correct. So with me just being by myself, I just knew that you would always have my back. You would just tell me by just checking on the camera. So I just felt like being in that position many times also, because we always run a small crew. I just think it's just I don't know. I feel I'm not answering this question right. I'm trying to because I don't want to seem like it was a negative thing. It was one camera guy moving around.
No,
you know?
I think it's important to say we should have budgeted more camera people.
Yeah, I think
so. You should have had a crew.
I respect that. I think what Nathan's trying to say, like, I think he's trying to be very generous about it when here's the reality. The reality is that there was a failure that happened on my end in the pre-production, right? And I own that. And I think that Nathan's being generous and not saying that outright, but that there was a failure in pre-production. And that was that, you know, the communication between us and the client was that this is going to be stationary presentations. So we're just going to have one person after another come up. They're going to deliver to the audience from slide decks specific information. All we have to capture is the slides that are on the screen, which we have an HDMI connection to. So we're feeding directly to that slide. And then we need just 2 cameras on a podium, and that's it. That was the expectation that was set. And the reality of what happened at this particular venue and event was that, you know, we got to the event venue and right off the bat, the event coordinator who was on site was not the same person as the marketer who was with us during the pre-production calls. And that event marketer told us immediately, hey, I've been to events like this in the past. And I can tell you, physicians who are in the audience are going to interrupt and they're going to ask questions on the fly. And that changed everything for us immediately. Like immediately we're like, okay, great. We need to set up an extra camera so that we have a backup in case we need to see the audience a little bit. And we also need to have additional mics. So, you know, our audio engineer had to put some condensers on top of the ceiling to be able to capture some of the audience in case someone didn't get a microphone fast enough. And we had to ask the event coordinator to be our handheld engineer and have, you know, a handheld mic on her and to try and chase after people who were trying to talk to get them a microphone so that they could be heard in the live stream. In a perfect world, these things wouldn't happen, right? In a perfect world, our run of show would have captured all of this before we even got there. And so what happened in this scenario was there was a breakdown between the people who were involved in the actual execution at the event venue and the people who were involved in the planning ahead of time. So I would encourage, if you're a healthcare marketer and you want to get a live stream to leverage for your marketing for the business of an upcoming event, talk to your event coordinator, get some of their insight on their past experience of similar events and figure out, is this somewhere where this would make sense and what would that look like? So what was originally supposed to be, you know, talking head presentations, which is I don't want to say simple, but a setup that's accomplishable with a little bit less resources and on a tighter budget, ended up actually being a town hall format event, which would have been executed very differently. We would have had a different amount of crew. It would have been a little higher budget, but it certainly would have presented them more value in their end product had we had, you know, an extra camera guy with a rig who was getting some footage of the audience participants and being able to be a little bit more mobile and flexible and capture people who were popping up on the fly and adding commentary. You know, if we had an extra production assistant to be there with a microphone, to be a runner so that, you know, both sides of the room had a really close access to a handheld microphone so that audience members were getting the mic the second that they decided they wanted to talk. And it probably would have changed even the way we approached our conversation with the moderator ahead of the event and the expectations we had them set at the beginning of the event. So instead of a moderator going up and saying, hey, we're going to talk through these different subject matters, they probably would have said, hey, we love that you guys are going to have questions. Just know that we have live participants joining us online. We don't want them to miss anything. So if you have a question, put your hand up and wait for someone to bring you a microphone before you start giving that question, right? So there are all sorts of little things that would have been approached differently if that run of show had been more accurate. And the way we could have gotten there in this scenario was more involved communication with all the participants who are going to be at the actual event. So I just encourage marketers, make sure you're talking to your event coordinators, make sure you're talking to your salespeople who are going to be there on site, and get them involved before the day of so that they can bring to light anything that they might know from past similar events.
Yeah, and that same scenario affected our audio guy. So one of the things that we insisted on, and I'm so glad we did, is having a dedicated audio guy. So shout out to Ryan. He did an amazing job. And the reason why we love using him is because he's got all this experience in audio, but he also does other AV work. So he works with cameras and lighting and all that stuff. So he was a great resource to have on set with us. And because of this scenario where it transitioned from a podium presentation to more of a town hall format, which is a great way to put it, Alyssa, Nason was bouncing around between cameras way more than he was supposed to initially, because initially it was like, this camera's going to stay in one spot, that camera's going to stay in one spot, and then we have one camera that's on a fluid head. That's what Nason's going to be running, and he's going to be moving that around. And so we threw this huge curveball of like, oh, by the way, Nason, you're going to have to be jumping between two cameras now. And Ryan, you now have 4 microphones, one on the host, one on the presenter, one floating around in the room. And then luckily, he just put a boom mic in the middle of the room pointed at the audience. And so a lot of the audience questions came out of that boom mic. And had he not done that, half of the questions would have begun with no microphone at all.
It's funny too, because like it was I guess I don't want to say I jinxed it, but it's always a running joke. Like whenever time we do whether it's a live or just a presentation, it doesn't have to be live. We're just filming someone. And I was like, who's going to be the one that's going to move, right? Because at the end of the day, we were good. Everything was fine, and it's just human nature. People will talk with their hands. Some people don't talk with their hands. People talk and walk around. Some people don't talk and walk around. So everything could have been perfect, and it could have just been that. It's just things happen, and that I just wanted to bring that up. That we were always preparing for something, because things like that always happen. And again, maybe someone could have gave us a heads up, like, hey, I'm a walker. All right, now I know when you are on stage, I will be moving around,
Yep.
And some of it would have been that like upfront communication with the people who were presenting too, right? Like this particular project's a great example of everything that can kind of go wrong. And I would still say that the end product came out pretty dang good. Like the client was very happy with what we accomplished. I think we're perfectionists, obviously. So we're tearing apart like, oh, we could have done this or that better. Fortunately, they got what they expected and they were happy with that. But we definitely saw opportunity for even more improvement so that in the future, these events could be leveraged in more ways. And so one of the things that could have been executed differently is we could have been better about getting those presenters in a little bit earlier so that we could have had that upfront conversation with them to set expectations of, hey, this is what the expectation is of the show. It's a stationary podium. The microphone's on there. You need to stay there. You need to face that direction. If you move at all, the people who are participating live on the internet are not going to hear you. And we really encourage you to stay there. And maybe even stationing a marketer on the client's team in the front row to keep an eye with that contact and let them know like, hey, I'm going to sit in the front and use me as a frame of reference of where to be looking so that you're staying stationary on the podium. I'll signal to you if things get off alignment and we can't hear you or anything like that. And just make yourself a resource to them, right? So those are all little things like that wouldn't have really cost a significant difference that could have been done to help mitigate some of these issues and keep it affordable and manage things in a way where it didn't shift the format. Now, with that said, our client loved that the format turned into a town hall, and we did too. We loved that the people, these clinicians in the audience, were so intrigued and curious about these case studies that they felt inclined to interrupt and ask questions, but also give personal examples of what they were experiencing in their practices and where they found the product useful and things that they weren't clear about. Like, hey, I see that you're using this product in this way. in my practice, here are the concerns we have about that. Can you help me understand that better? Like, to us, that created a more valuable piece for them. But it did shift the way we think about, okay, we love that. What do we do next time to make sure that we can capture that even better? But yeah, I mean, it was fun.
It was fun.
Yeah, I at least with this shoot, and I know we try to tell other clients to also do this, that once we're done, we usually have it already backed up. Like, all the footage is already kind of safe. So if there is mistakes that happen live, that doesn't mean we can't fix it, and then you guys can re-upload it, and now it's forever. Now it's not just a one-time event that you had to be there to watch it. No, we can get the footage. We fix up the little bits of maybe someone walked by the camera. That's why we have 2 other angles, so it makes it seem like nothing happened. So I think that's another thing that marketers should also remember, is that you can use the footage and utilize it into other spaces, and just I say you can just reuse the footage in a way that will help you even more than just that one live event.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of wrap up the last crew member, just as we finish out this episode, that I think is the most valuable crew member for us is the client marketer or the client's event coordinator. Someone from your guys' side who can be our advocate with your team. Because there are times where, you've been in those meetings with us, you understand after asking all those questions for a couple months about what's important, why we plan things a certain way. And so you're in the know with the crew. And so it's not like we have a crew and you have a team. We're all on the same team. And I would say that Memphis shoot, our client contact, the event coordinator who was there, she was awesome. Like, she was so good. She was coming up with solutions with us as we went. She was reminding people to sit at the podium for us. She was just definitely part of the team. And so super grateful for her, and to all of our clients who've done that for us. We're so lucky that we have so many clients where we're like, hey, we need this. And you know why? Because we've had all these conversations prior to, and they're like, got it, I got you. And they help us take care of it. So the biggest thing is that it's not just us on the crew, it's you guys too. We're all having the same goal. We all have the same goal of a really great live stream. And I know as we move forward for this client in particular, what is cool is we're going to be doing more live streams for them in this format where it's more of a town hall, and we can come with a run of show that remedies all of the issues that we ran into. And so again, just a quick reminder, when we're planning a live stream, the things to really think about is, what's the run of show? Where are we going to do this? What's the location going to be like? And based on those 2 things, what's going to be the best crew for the format that we're trying to live stream? We're looking forward to doing your live stream, to having these conversations with you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We know that these podcasts are super, super valuable. We love planning them for you, and we love hearing back from you also on these podcasts. So don't forget to comment, ask your questions. Those will become future podcasts where we can answer those questions for you. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you soon.